And at the time he met Mary, Mary has kept herself as a virgin. That's why we read the passage about a virgin. Virgins, I know they will focus on the kingdom. Virgins focus on their assignment. Even though she was betrothed to marry, whether the marriage takes place or not, she would like to make heaven. She was prepared to make heaven. That is why he said, are you sure it's the God himself, the Holy Spirit himself that want to do this? Then I don't need my husband to be consent. Let it be according to your word. Without the parents knowing, without the husband parent knowing, without the parents, anybody, he just made a decision. God knows what he has set in motion.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
So it's like the virgins, they focus. Those who they will focus to being virgin, they focus on the day they get married. If it has not happened, they focus to serve in the kingdom. They don't prostitute their bodies. But guess what? The enemy does so much so that some of them, they rape us in order to set the things in motion. They rape in order to contaminate the body. Because the background you're coming from, it has been programmed that everybody need to go through this burden. You need to carry the burden that was programmed by your ancestors 4 generations before you. That no woman will enter marriage in this bloodline as a virgin. Some bloodline, that's how it is. This body, that is the temple of the Holy Ghost. This body, that is a member of Christ, that God wants to have to himself. He instituted marriage. So when you give it to him in that virgin state, you have fulfilled his scriptures. So that is why getting married is not bad. But the reason why enemy is making you break marriage and go to another and break is because he wants you to be defiled. So these are some of the things we need to call by name and deal with. The enemy don't want to do a divorce just for divorce sake. No, he is benefiting from it. If not, it will not happen. If the enemy, which is a spirit, is not benefiting from that act of divorce, that our marriage, that turbulence, he will not engineer it. Amen. Mary had planned her marriage, bought her wedding gown, prepared and hired and paid for the area she was going to have it, how she's going to want it. But God showed up and changed everything. Who is God? He's a spirit. He didn't ask her advice. He didn't ask her, but I want your body. Will you agree? Yes, the things sound nice, but she didn't consider the immediate things that she's going to go through. The shame, the reproach, the rejection that she was going to suffer. Because it has never happened before. How can you convince me that a spirit slept with you and impregnated you and is manifested physically? Amen. And the Bible said that her husband, to be being a righteous man, planned to put her away secretly. Because if he doesn't do it that way, they will have to stone her and kill her. So he also chose to suffer that shame that will take her and then later will put her out secretly. Because to take somebody like that means you are prepared to shoulder the burden with her. Because you knew the person. That's why I said Galatians chapter 6 verse 2 says we can help another shoulder the burden. But when it comes to verse 5, it said each one must carry his own burden. The thing was in the womb of Mary. I can only shoulder the reproach to prevent you from dying, from prevent you from being stoned. Relevant, some of the things that we are going through until we face it square on and call some of the things by name and deal with it, it will not stop. Because the enemy Satan cannot stand exposure. It cannot stand exposure. So it does everything for you to keep it under cover. I know if you say it, you'll be disgraced. People will laugh at you. And so what? What are they saying now? Amen.
Amen.
Verse 19.
What know ye not that your body is a temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own?
Amen.
Amen.
And you are not your own. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are the temple of the Creator. God designed you to dwell in you. And any temple, that's the place where the Spirit for which the temple was created meets you. That's the place where you offer your sacrifice. That's the place where you render your worship. That's the place where the Spirit meets you to take that which you had for Him. And in your case, it happens in your body. That's what the Bible says. We should give our bodies as well a living sacrifice. We are not dead, we are alive. And our bodies every day must be given consciously as a living sacrifice unto Him. If we do this, trust me, our deliverance will speed up. Because we are doing everything to remove every loopholes, point of contact, satanic seed, deposit, contamination that the enemy has sown in us, that are hiding, that are prolonging our bondage, prolonging our captivity, prolonging our deliverance, prolonging our freedom. So in the name of Jesus, anything in you that has made your body at a den of evil, that has made your body one with the harlot, I break it in the name of Jesus.
Hallelujah.
We break it in the name of Jesus.
Break it.
So you are His temple. You are the temple of God.
Yes, sir.
And say, and you are not your own. The Bible says you and I, we are not our own. The body does not belong to you. Like I said earlier, it belongs to the one who created and gave it to you. So if you are in possession of something that does not belong to you, and the one it belongs to is your provider, the one watches over you, then why would you take it and make it one with the harlot? Amen.
Amen.
We must resolve to make sure that this body is kept holy.
Yes.
Kept as a living sacrifice. Holy and acceptable unto Him. Because that's the only way. When we engage the altar for our deliverance, we engage the power He has placed in us for our freedom. That's the only way we see speedily recovery of everything we've ever lost. Amen.
Amen.
Because the power is in us. What it would to take us to be delivered is a residence inside of us. We just have to expose the enemy. Verse 20 says,
For ye are bought with a price. Therefore, glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's.
Amen. Everything belongs to what? God. So you were bought at a price. It cost God so much to purchase this body, to purchase this spirit, to purchase us to Himself. Like I said earlier, it was a risk God took to become flesh. Peradventure, if the enemy had discovered it, you know what would have happened to his position as a deity, as the creator of the whole universe? You and I wouldn't have been here today. Amen? So that's why He said we were bought at a price. It cost Him. He looked at Jesus hanging on a tree and turned His back towards Him. The first time Jesus called Him, God, my God, why have you forsaken me? He used to call Him my Father. He said, I am my Father, I won. The Son does nothing by what He sees the Father does. He called Him Father. But at that point, He said, my God. It cost Him. He said, we were bought at a price. How much can you pay in exchange of this body? It was so expensive that God needed unblemished sacrifice. A flowing blood, a living blood. 1 Corinthians 15, I think 45 says the first Adam was a living soul, but the last Adam was a life-giving spirit. Why? Because an Adam is so it's written. The first man Adam was made a living soul. The last Adam was made a quickening spirit. Amen. Because why? He is looking for our spirit to be in charge. The soul perished. The soul sinned. The soul became dead. Say, what shall you profit a man when you gain the whole world and loses his soul? Amen. Why? Because the body is not yours. The soul is not yours. The spirit is not yours. You are a caretaker. He said that thing you have, that you cherish so much, spend time so much, it belongs to the Creator. But it's for the Lord.
Yeah.
Like the hidden inhabitant of the Corinth, the Corinthian that time is just like a UK, London. Fornication was the order of the day. They're a harbor city, so everything goes. People come to do trade, so the women there, they exchange their body for all sort of things, wealth, name it. So Paul says, no, you are now a different creation. You can't continue like this. What you used to do when you were in the world, you can't continue to do the same things. You are a new person. You are a new kingdom. You belong to a new family. Your body is no longer yours.
No longer yours.
Now it belongs to somebody. So give it to him. It was never formed for any such purpose. So Paul was saying, but for the Lord, for the service and the honor of God. I want us to read Romans chapter 6, 19 to 23. Just want to add that one to it.
Romans 6 verse 19. I speak after the manner of men, because of the infirmity of your flesh. For as ye have yielded your members servants to uncleanness and to iniquity, unto iniquity, even so now yield your members servants to righteousness unto holiness.
Verse 23.
Verse 23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is the eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
It says, I speak in the manner of men because of the infirmity of our flesh. For as ye have yielded our members servant to uncleanness and to iniquity unto iniquity, even so now I'm speaking to yield your members servant to righteousness and unto holiness. Amen. Because that was the order of the day. So they thought becoming Christ is just confess him as a Lord and Savior, and then coming to church, going to the Lord's Supper, give a Lord communion, go back home, come the following time, go back home, come the following time, and go about your life the same as if nothing has happened. And Paul looked at it and said, no, this is polluting the church. Yeah. If you continue this way, you will become a fool in the mouth of the devil. So you must now yield your body as you once yielded it to Satan through uncleanness. Now give it to righteousness, give it to holiness the same way. And that's the only way that they were able to subdue and overcome. Amen.
Amen.
The Lord is for the body. That is, as some may think, Christ is the Lord of the body. To have to have a Lord, be the Lord of the body means to have property in it. You have dominion over it. Assuming a body have been made to partaker of a nature that is not of God, what will happen? God cannot dwell in it. But if you give it to him, for him to dwell in, overtake it, dominate it, he will dwell and he will watch over it and bless it. Amen. So we must take care that we do not use what belongs to Christ as if it were our own in order to dishonor it.
Amen.
The next point is that some understand that the body is the Lord. That is it's just for the resurrection and the glorification, according to the same Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14, which is the second argument that people have when it comes to yielding the body to God or the body belonging to God. But God both raised up our Lord and raised us
Also
up
raised up us by his own power.
of him who shall challenge our vile body and make it like to his glorious body by the power whereby he is able to subdue all things unto himself. If you read Philippians chapter 3 verse 21. So it is honor down to you and I that this body that we are having is like the Lord's. But on the last day, he will change them in the twinkling of an eye to become like his glorious body.
Amen.
So what happens if it is the filthy one? You can't change it. You can't touch it and change it. Amen.
Amen.
The hopes of a resurrection to glory should restrain Christians, or you and I, from dishonoring our bodies through fleshly lusts or making it one with the harlots. The third point I want us to look at quickly is that the honor of the body. He said, know you not that your bodies are the members of Christ? If the soul be united to Christ by faith, the whole man is become a member of his mystical body. The body is in union with Christ as well as the soul. Because it's a mystery. That's why I said mystical. It's a mystery surrounding your body being like Christ. Your body belongs to the Lord. Your body being one member with Christ. It's a mystery. But it is the truth.
Yeah.
It's not a fact. Fact is subject to change. It is the truth. It's part of his body because why? He says so in his word. So we must see it as such and render to him as such. That this you are carrying for your body is not yours. You are a caretaker.
Yeah.
It is my temple. Yeah. It's my dwelling place.
Yeah.
It's the place I want to meet you. So when he first entered Jerusalem and entered the temple, that same day, that same moment, he took the whip. The Bible says he drove them out. He drove them out. That's the same power and the same authority you need to employ to drive out anything deposited in your body, whether from the womb, whether by your own action, whether by ancestor. It does not matter. You have the power to throw them out. You have the power to drive them out. You have the power to cast them out. And tonight you will cast them out in the name of Jesus.
In the name of Jesus. Hallelujah.
They must leave you alone.
Yes.
Because we must honor this body.
Yes.
It is the temple of the Holy Spirit. It is not the property of a harlot. It's not the property of satanic altars or ancestral altars or any witchcraft altar. It is the Lord's. It is the Lord. It is the Lord. It is good to know in what honorable relations we stand, that we may endeavor to become those honor. When it comes to our body, it's an honor for us to know that this body is cherished by God. He calls it his temple. He calls it a member of Christ. He calls it his dwelling place. So you wonder, how can God dwell in this body? He's so big. The Bible says he filled the whole world. The Bible says he used the entire heaven as his throne, the earth as his footstool. That is the mystery. This great and mighty God said he fits inside your body.
Yeah.
Because through you, he can manifest his greatness. Through you, he can manifest his nature. Yeah. Through you, he can manifest his power. Through you, he can put the enemy to shame. Because the battle in this life is the battle over souls. And that's what you carry.
Yes.
That's what residence inside of you. Satan is not fighting you because you are a male or you are a female. He's fighting you because you carry a soul. And the more souls you have, the more credit you have in your account. Just like you and I know, the Bible says we are ambassadors on this earth. Because when you are saved and you are empowered, then he grooms you, prepares you, and brings you to represent him in your family, in your environment, in your city, in your workplace, in everywhere you find out. He prepares you to represent him there. Why? What are you going to do? To deliver his own, to protect his own, to intercede for his own,
Yes.
to prepare his own, so that the enemy will not have field day in their lives. If the enemy tries to chase you, you go to your father in your temple. You are safe, you are secure. Because the name of the Lord is a strong tower.
It's a strong tower.
When the righteous run into it, the Bible says they are safe,
Yes.
they are secure. And who is bearing the name? The name is Christ. Who is Christ? He is resident inside of you. So as many as received him, to them that even believe, he gave them the power, he gave them the right to become children of God. That is how you become to have his own body, even though separate from him. But the Bible is part of the members.
Yeah.
It's part of the members. Apostle says, I take the members of Christ and make them the members of a harlot. God forbid, like we read in verse 15.
Yeah.
Or take away the members of Christ. Will not this be a gross abuse? Will not dishonor Christ and dishonor ourselves to the very last degree? If we do that, what makes Christ members of the Christ members, the members of harlot, prostitute them to so a veiled purpose is because we fail to recognize and appreciate the honor bestowed on us. If we take it for granted, the enemy have a field day. Because if you place the value, the same value God places on your body, then you are in a position to defend it, to protect it, to do everything possible to prevent the enemy from misusing it at your peril. I'm going to pray very soon. The fifth point I want us to look at. It is sin against our bodies if we make it one with the harlot. Like we read, it's every sin that is committed outside. But the sin that he commits that involve adultery, fornication, sexual act, he said it is with the body.
Yeah.
It's against yourself. So in other words, when you ask for forgiveness of those sins, you must go another mile to make sure anything entered you through that act comes out. Because if you steal something, it is a sin, is it not? You are not sin, you are not, but you come before God, you are convicted, you need to confess. If you still have the thing in your possession, you must restitute, you must take it back. Amen? But this one, he said, it is against yourself. You know why? Because when you became born, you became one with him. You became like him. You had his mind. You became a spiritual being. And just as Christ came and used the same body to do exploit, to destroy the work of the enemy, you have the same power. That's why he said, the things that I do, you will do the same, even greater, because I go to the Father.
Yes.
What is he doing? To intercede for you so that you'll be able to do what he did and greater. But if your body become one with the hollow, one with the evil altar, ancestral altar, the family altar, the territorial altar, the witchcraft altar, there is no way you can even do what he did. Let's talk about doing greater.
Sir.
That's the work of the enemy. It doesn't want us to fulfill our God-given potential. We are the power of God in this universe to trample Satan underneath.
Amen.
He said, you are my battle axe. You are my battle axe. My weapon of war. So that is why your body belongs to me. That is why this body is my temple, my dwelling place. Don't allow the enemy to use it. The next part is that the bodies of Christians, the body for you and I, are the temple of the Holy Ghost, as we explained earlier on. He that is joined to Christ is one spirit, as we said. He is yielded up to him and is consecrated, set apart for what? His use. In other words, when you are set apart, you become possessed with the Spirit of God. You become infiltrated with His very nature. Everything about you is about Him. When you open your mouth, you are talking about, you are testifying about Him. If you dream about your environment, you dream about heaven, you dream about your assignment, you dream about. But if you dream and you see yourself in an ancestral home, you dream you see yourself sacrificing or be bound before an altar. You dream you see yourself people chasing you. It is because an aspect of your body is yielded. Is yielded to the harlot, and the harlot is having a field day. Because I want us to read 2 Corinthians 6:14. Yes, sir.
Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?
Amen.
Amen.
So we should not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. It does not mean you don't talk to them. Because if you don't talk to them, how can you witness to them? To be yoked means you become one with them, unbreakable. And in the spiritual, I said the two becomes one. So anything that yokes you together makes you one with the person. If the person happens to be an unbeliever, the person is in the line or in the bloodline of a harlot, of an evil altar.
Yes.
Being influenced by the world. And you and I know the God of this world. Amen. So everything programmed in this world is by the God of this world. So if the person is worldly, you have yoked yourself with the worldly, it doesn't make you a temple of the Holy Ghost.
No.
So that's why I said we should not yoke ourselves with unbelievers. For what fellowship have righteousness and iniquity? And what fellowship have darkness and light? But you and I agree that even though we show forth light so much, but darkness seems to be overcoming. Meanwhile, darkness respects light and runs away. But we have to battle to drive away darkness. Why? Because we have given him a footstool. We are yoked with him. So how can he cut off your finger and not get hurt? When you are joining the finger together. Amen.
Amen.
So there's no fellowship between darkness and light. No fellowship between righteousness and iniquity. Therefore, we should not unequally yoke ourselves with unbelievers. So don't say, oh, don't worry, if I marry him, I will change him. It's a lie from the pit of hell. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Amen.
This is some of the things we are dealing with, trust me. Especially, let's pray for our children, let's pray for our young ones. There's some of the partners they are bringing around. Some of them, if you see them, it's hell. Amen. Amen. The enemy is lying to them that you can marry and then after that, because one, if you don't marry them now, we're going to fornicate, and if you fornicate, it's also sin. So if you marry them, at least it's right. That is sin as well. He said, do not unequally yoke with unbelievers, because they don't share the same spirit with you. They don't share the same faith with you. They don't share the same altar with you. They don't share the same value with you. So before you know, they will take you into iniquity. They will draw you away. That's one of the advice Balaam gave to Barak. That, you know what? I want to curse them, but I receive commandment to bless. So I can but bless them. I have blessed them. But these altars, 21 altars I've raised, cannot be in vain. Let me give you an idea. Let them intermarry. Bring them to the camp. Bring your women to the camp. And 3,000 died. Unequally yoke with unbelievers. The enemy will do everything to make you to submit, because that is his tool. Do not allow it. How can the bodies or the members of Christ be made one with the harlot? Do not allow it. If you have allowed it already, you have what it takes to undo it. Address it by call it by name. Not necessarily in their complaint. Call it by name at home. If your parent did it like my house. After my grandfather only was born, because he want to populate the family, he ended up with 10 wives. Because our grandmother was told, I was the first wife, that she will have only 3 boys. And she only gave it to 3 boys. And the 3 boys, the second is my father, who also got married. My mother is the second wife. I said it before. You understand? So it was programmed. This is the burden that I did not start. So, and the polygamy, you and I know, is a breeding ground for witchcraft.
Yeah.
I never heard anything about this until when I was about to travel to bring my uncle's children from the village to come to a boarding house in Tema. And I saw the picture, obituary, because he died several years ago, and the old obituary was there. And I counted the wife. I counted 10. Of course, I didn't meet any of them. I counted 10. I didn't even know that he also struggled to have children. So when you because they say you have your only child, your parent gave birth to you as an only child, and you also married, you didn't have children, and the altar say this wife you presented, you only have only 3 boys. How can I populate my lineage? And those times they attribute the problem to the women, and it's not even those. Even today, people are still doing. They attribute the problem to women. God, it's the women people see carrying the pregnancy, but who gave them the pregnancy? Who dropped the seed? They're only incubators. What you give them is what they give back to you, multiply, press down, shake it together, and they bring it back to you. Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
But they blame the women. It's all part of the manipulation of the enemy, so that they can come in unity with the satanic altar, with the evil altar, so that we have covenant with them, and by so doing, all the lines, this bloodline, have been filthy, is faulty, the foundation is so wrong. You carry burdens you don't know the genesis about. You carry burdens you don't know who started it, because you don't even know why would my great grandparents not have children for them to go to the altar. Who came and suggested it to them? Who came and pointed them to where they're supposed to go? It's something I need to address by name.
Yeah.
I did not know all these things when I became born again. I did not know. I prayed, but nothing. Amen?
Amen.
Until God brought me here under the feet of our Father.
Yeah.
And by His direction and insight, I'm able to produce results.
Yes.
And you will also produce results.
Amen.
Any yoke that ties you to a harlot,
Yoke.
any yoke that ties you to an
Any
evil
yoke,
altar,
yes.
any yoke that ties you to an
Any yoke,
ancestral
yes.
altar, any yoke that will make you
Any
one with
yoke.
Satan, and make you one with ancestral spirit, today we break it in the name of
In the
Jesus.
name of Jesus.
We break that evil
Break
yoke.
that yoke.
Break that evil yoke.
Break that yoke.
Break that evil
Break
yoke.
it.
In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Please take your seat. I deliberately made it that way. Say what I'm saying and still missing deliverance, because it's both sides. Our natural life we are living is what the enemy used to place us in bondage,
Yeah.
for us to be in need of deliverance. But if we watch our steps, watch our ways, watch what goes into us, watch the relationship we enter into, we don't rush into it, because God is never late. If you really want Him to give you a marriage partner and you are trusting Him for it, then trust Him for it. It's that even though He bears long with them, will He not avenge them and avenge them speedily? Even though it looks as if it's delayed, even though it looks as if it's not answering. That's why He told when the wicked judge and the widow story, Luke 18. He said, even though He bears long, even though He bears long with them, He will avenge and avenge speedily. When God gave you His best, you'll be amazed. You will say, had I known, I wouldn't have cried. God knows. Amen?
Amen.
God does what? Knows.
No.
Verse 15.
Know ye not.
No, 2 Corinthians 16, 15. 16. 6:15.
And what concord
Yeah.
hath Christ with Belial? Or what part had he that believeth with an infidel?
16.
And what agreement had the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people.
Amen.
Amen.
Did you see that? He said, what fellowship does you have with someone that is possessed with an evil spirit? Sons of Belial. Belial are people who are possessed with evil spirit. If we read the book of, I think, Genesis chapter 18, it talks about a priest who had loved his concubine so much that the concubine ran away to his father's house. Because of time, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to give you a summary. Look at it later. And he went and brought the concubine. Concubine ran. So eventually, he visited the concubine in the father's house in order to bring the concubine. But they persuaded him, oh, stay till I go tomorrow. He stayed. He did. The second day, he stayed. Eventually, when they got, it was late, but he persisted, we must go. And before you know, they sojourned in a place in the night. In the house, the people, sons of Belial, were there. They saw that a stranger, a priest, and a wife have entered here. And they came into the house. He said, bring that man, that we may know him. I said, no. Like in the case of Saul, Lot. So this is my guest. I can't bring him. Anyway, this is my daughter. They handed the daughter. The Bible says they slept with his daughter throughout the night to the following day. And when they woke up in the morning, opened the door. Her hands were on the threshold, lifeless and dead. That's the work of the sons of Belial. That's the work of unbelievers. That's the sons of people who are connected to the altar. That is of Satan. The priest took the wife, put her on a donkey, came back to Israel country. Guess what? He divided the body. You know, it's against the priest, one, to touch the dead body, let alone to cut them to pieces. Judges chapter 8, you read it. And this brought war in Israel. If we want war to cease in our life, in our land, in our family, we should avoid being unequally yoked with unbelievers. God does make us one with the harlot. If you are one with the harlot, they share in your inheritance. They share in your property. Yeah. Nothing you have come. You can't deny them anything because they are one with you. They must share it with you. And Bible said we are heirs. As a matter of fact, co-heirs. Because God doesn't have a secondborn. No. Because it's the firstborn also that inherits. So guess what? God wants you and I to inherit. He said He make us co-heirs or joint heirs with Christ. So will you use the inheritance of God through Christ and make it one with Satan? Why have we made our bodies one with the harlot? It was not meant to be. So whatever drove us to make our bodies one with the harlot, I want us to deal with it. But before then, let's read Hebrews chapter 3, 1 to 13. 1 to 3. Okay, 1 to 13, but also 1 to 3. Hebrews chapter 3. Yes.
Hebrews chapter 3 from verse 1. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Christ Jesus.
He said what? Take it by one. He said,
Wherefore,
brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle. He's talking about Jesus. Yeah. Consider the high priest of our profession. Who is he? Christ Jesus. So consider him. Tonight, I want us to consider him.
Yes.
Consider him in your heart. Consider him in your mind. Consider him. Verse 2. Consider him.
Who was faithful?
He was faithful
to him that appointed him. As also Moses was faithful in all his house.
Moses was faithful on all his house. He was faithful in all his house. Everything everything Moses was called to do, he was faithful in it. He was faithful in the house. Verse 3.
Verse 3. For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses, inasmuch as he who had builded the house had more honor than the house.
Amen.
Amen.
Moses was glorious in the house, but the one who built the house had more honor than the house. Guess what? You are the house. Amen. He said, every house, if you continue, every house is built by somebody.
Yeah.
Add to on to it. Verse 4.
Yes, sir. Verse
Every
4.
house.
For every house is builded by someone, but he that builds all things is God.
Is God. Is the one building you up. Verse 5.
And Moses verily was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after.
Afterwards. 6.
But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house are we, if we hold fast the confidence of the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end.
Unto the end. If we don't do it till the end, we will fail and we can never be rewarded. And we will lose our salvation. So, but Christ as son over his own house, whose house you and I are. If we hold fast, in other words, we are not yet, until we hold fast to the end, we are not his house. If not, he will not give us such a message for us to work towards to become his house. If we work towards and working toward effectively, the deliverance will speed up. Because beloved, all of us sitting here, very soon if the Lord leave this ministry to where God has ordained it to be. The other time I said something like, for example, you look at Yonggi Cho's ministry. At the city is 1 million. How many pastors do we have? Will he have? How about the ushers? How many of them? Have we thought about that? So if God, within 3 months, give us a congregation of 10,000, how many pastors will be available to do one-to-one counseling, to do deliverance? God wants all of us to work on ourselves and work it quickly. God is waiting on us. So he himself is the Lord over his own house. The house that you and I are.
Yeah.
If you hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm. In other words, it's work. It's hard work. Unto the end. Then our life will be disconnected from the harlot and be reconnected to the true hair, which is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The Lord will give us insight, will open our eyes into the areas of our life where we are connected and be made one with the harlot. I want to ask you sitting like, just bow down your heads briefly. Bow down your head briefly. And just think about it yourself. Are you his temple? Are you his house? Are we holding on firm? The hope. Say, the house which we are. Holy brethren, he calls us. Say, partakers of the heavenly callings. We have been called to heaven.
Yes.
We don't live here. So we are in this world but not of the world. We are heavenly bound. And heaven is a holy place. God is a holy God.
Yes.
His spirit is not called Holy Spirit for nothing. The holy is not his first name or his surname. That is who he is. And how can the Holy Spirit dwells in the den of harlots? Just want to think about the message. He did not bind, he did not break, we didn't release fire. But you are working on yourself. That if you take it serious, one fire, and the enemy will salute and go. Who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. Verse 7 says, wherefore, as the Holy Ghost said, today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your heart, as in the day the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness, when our fathers tempted me, proved me, and saw my works 40 years. What happened in 40 years? They suffered. They went in circles. They were delivered from Egypt, but Egypt was not delivered from them. So Egypt killed them in the wilderness. Only Caleb, who had another spirit, and Joshua made it. And Bible says the same Jesus yesterday, today, and forever. So if he did not spare them then, what makes you think that he will spare us now? Say, today is the day of salvation. We should not harden our heart as our fathers did. Some people will argue that our fathers did not know Jesus. It's a lie from the pit of hell. They had options. Abraham would have had excuse. But when we went to Israel, we were told that Abraham was asking questions. That how can you have God for this, God for that, God for that? Because the Spirit of God was working through him. That's why God chose him out of the family. Because at the same time, our fathers were going to evil altars. There are some families, they were inviting missionaries. They were supporting them. Just go back 10 generations, the same family as yours, and other missionaries in Ghana. You will know. So the enemy has lied to us. But this evening, this moment, Jesus said, this is the day of salvation. Harden not your heart. What you do now will determine what will happen to your life, to your family, to your children 10 years from now. The Bible says, unto whom swear he that they should not enter into his rest, but to them that believe not. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. While it is said today, if we hear his voice, harden not your heart, as in the provocation. For some, when they had heard, did provoke, howbeit not all that came out of Egypt by Moses. But with whom was he grieved 40 years? Was it not with them that had sinned, whose carcasses fell in the wilderness? Father, we thank you. I presented the word. As hard as it was, difficult as it was, I've said it.
Amen.
Holy Spirit, do your work.
Amen.
Your powerful work. Your good work. Work of conviction. Work of prompting. Work of revelation. Work of direction.
Amen.
To the areas we need to look at. For he said, when we confess our sin, he is faithful and he is just to forgive and to cleanse from those we don't know. But it will take us confessing those we know. Holy Spirit, we confess. In the days of Daniel, he confessed the sins of his fathers. He confessed the sins of the kings before he confessed his own sins. And you heard him. We also, Lord, We ask that you forgive us. Any area of our life that we have yielded and made one with a harlot, made one with a prostitute, made one with an evil altar, for that food, for that clothing, for that amount, for that little pleasure, without counting the cost, without weighing the consequences. Lord, we want to hold firm to the end. So forgive us.
Amen.
Lord, forgive us.
Yes,
Lord, forgive us.
forgive us.
Lord, forgive us.
Yes.
Lord, forgive us.
Yes.
Lord, forgive us.
Yes.
As we bow our heads, we commune with you and you alone.
Amen.
This body, it's yours. It's your temple. It's your house.
Yes.
You said it is yours, not our own.
No.
Today, thank you for the reminder
Yes.
that we don't owe ourselves.
Amen.
That everything we have
Everything.
was given to us by you.
Yes.
And there's the day of accountability.
Yes.
Lord, I pray, oh God,
Amen.
that because of this message,
Yes.
when that day comes,
Yes.
let us not be found wanting.
Amen.
Spirit of the living God,
Yes.
touch every heart,
Touch every heart.
touch every soul.
Touch every soul.
Revive us, oh God, and bring us to that place
Amen.
where we first met you,
Amen.
where you first met us,
Amen.
when we loved you to bits, when we did everything to prevent sin from entering us. Take us back to that place where we first met you.
Amen.
Holy Spirit,
Yes.
we thank you.
Thank you.
We thank you.
Thank you, Lord.
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 We thank
We
you.
thank you, Lord.
In the name of
In the
Jesus.
name of Jesus.
Amen. God bless you.
Hallelujah. What's the message? Can we clap for God? You know, we are not clapping for God, man. We are clapping for God. God bless you.